Welcome to the Five Phenomenon Podcast. I am your host, Shane Hayes, and with me again, returning this week, is Ted Haycraft.
I am back.
He is back. We had an adventure last night which we'll discuss later. We went to the drive-in, which you said it was your first drive-in trip to. We went to this town near Evansville called Rio, which is spelled R-E-O, and that's because it's in between the towns of Rockport, Evansville, and Owensboro, and there's like a three-way intersection that is the center of town, and there's a holiday drive-in there.
In the state of Kentucky, the state of my birth.
No, it's in Indiana. It's across the river. It's on the north side of the river.
Is it? I thought Rockport, Owensboro. No, sorry, you're right. I'm sorry. Rockport is Indiana. God, I'm spacing out. I was up late last night. Went to drive-in.
Yeah, so it's not.
You're right, Indiana.
You really haven't been there in a while, but
no, I don't think I ever have been at that drive-in. In fact, I was thinking on the way over here. I don't think my last drive-in experience there were still speakers. I don't think I've ever done a drive-in with a radio tuner.
Which last night, unfortunately, was not the best example.
Yeah, there was some interference on it, wasn't there?
I've had worse, but before we go into the movies we watch, I do want to. I haven't been open these episodes with what I've been watching lately, but I did want to put out a recommendation since I know a lot of us are dealing with 2020ism, not just the pandemic making us agitated, but a bad election year, and it feels like we're all a little more prone to bring Thanksgiving dinner too early and want to yell at our own relatives, much less yell at everyone else. And one movie I want to recommend that just came up on Netflix this week, I gotta say up front, is not an amazing piece of filmmaking, but is, I think everyone should see, is called The Social Dilemma. It's a bunch of Silicon Valley people led by Tristan Harris, who heads the Center for Humane Technology. And a lot of these people who designed a lot of how the social programs were on, from Google's Gmail, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, WhatsApp, all these people that were in the early days of it have now turned into how these programs are making us insane and more divisive and hurting our mental health in ways we can't control or even acknowledge. Do
they include podcasts?
They also have I also recommend that. It's called Your Undivided Attention. The thing is, the movie makes this really unfortunate choice of doing fictionalized interludes, and it does not have the sophistication of an Errol Morris. Let's just say they're not real recreation, they're scripted, and it's very distracting because the two main it's a multicultural family, and the two oldest teenagers, one is played by that guy who was the obnoxious guy in Booksmart, and the eldest teenager girl is played by a grown-up from the I forget her name, but she was in Moonrise Kingdom, the child from Moonrise Kingdom. And so not only is that distracting, but they also have, I can't remember his name, but Pete from Mad Men. He plays the version of the app provoking you, whether to give you notifications. The doc dives into how data starts to learn us better than we know ourselves and is constantly agitating our brains. And yeah, Pete is the app. That was unfortunate. There's also this bizarre thing, this very Silicon Valley touch where Tristan Harris is he runs that podcast, which I do like, and he's a great thinker and a great person that's come out almost like a whistleblower for Facebook. But I want to say he's the head of the Center for Humane Technology who put this doc up, and there's this very distracting thing with his interviews where I swear to you, it's composited. Like, they have a blue screen or green screen behind him for no reason, just because it's the most innocuous backdrop that's supposed to look normal. And especially at the end, when I started realizing this, I really got the feeling that they probably tested what background would be more influenced on people, and That's not a great. That's not a great way to end to sell people on the movie.
No, the reason I said podcast, are we adding to the insanity here by doing our podcast?
No, the podcast is a place to go. My media diet during the pandemic has been way more podcasts, which I apologize to listeners here. You'd think it would improve the quality of this, but there's a feeling I have that this is more democratic just because it's long form than this is what we thought the internet was going to be. Just the only problem was the internet ends up being more short attention span and more agitation and provocations, and something like a podcast long form requires more attention, requires more nuance, requires more good faith understanding and discussions and debates. And
I can't keep my babble down to a Twitter length. I'm terrible at that.
Yeah, well, I mean, we have a Twitter, we have an Instagram, and we have a Facebook, but I never update the Twitter, and God bless us, I would be happy never to touch Twitter ever again. But on that, let's probably get back to the title of this week's podcast. We ended up watching such a great drive-in double feature, The Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2.
Yes, yeah, that's and again, I think we both figured out it's been a long time since we've revisited it.
One of the cool things, this morning I was reading, I came across a Nabokov quote from his memoir, Speak Memory, and it's about books, but it says, one cannot read a book, one can only reread a book. And you and I both, when we got to the drive-in, realized for a series of movies from a great filmmaker who's making a very highly taunted piece of genre filmmaking that is beloved by many, you and I have only seen both these movies once.
Yeah, I want to say that there's a good chance I might have saw Evil Dead 2 more than once, but so I can, off the top of my head, I've only saw them once, and I think I saw them out of order possibly too.
Well, because you were saying you don't think Evil Dead played Evansville.
Yeah, we need to talk to Mick Steeler or somebody and find out if he's.
It would make sense that it didn't play here, but
Yeah.
it was so cool because it felt like a drive-in movie. That was
Yeah.
part of the fun. I was in high school. All our friends were into Army of Darkness. There was a lot of lines we quoted from.
Well,
Army of
yeah,
Darkness.
it was interesting because I think as each film came out, the trilogy. Army of Darkness is considered part of the Evil Dead trilogy. It picked up more people, and the people would go back and get the VHS or find it on cable, and then and do the homework of finding the earlier entries.
Well, as I told you, when we got into it, Evil Dead 2 was readily available, but Evil Dead, it took a while. I remember I couldn't rent it anywhere in town. I had to go to that, it's not a Suncoast, but it's one of those video stores that were prominent at malls. It was the only place I knew in town that sold laser discs. I knew sold laser discs. I knew there were other places. And I had to buy it when it came out on VHS.
Probably cost you quite a bit back then, too.
Yeah.
I fib a little bit to you today. I said I'm not going to do any homework for this podcast, but I did stick in the Evil Dead Anchor Bay disc last night before I went to bed.
Yeah.
And they had a whole one feature that was really interesting of the English UK distribution of the thing. They actually picked the people that picked it up, Palace Video, I think as they were called. They released it in the theaters, the Rank organization, and on video at the same time.
Well, wasn't there a thing where Evil Dead got banned?
Well, it got sucked into the video nasties, the whole UK band, and they selected all these titles. It's a notorious thing, and there's documentaries and books and articles all about the video nasties. But I think they were able to extract Evil Dead out of that because the judge saw it, and they were able to get some court cases for them.
I guess I'm vaguely familiar with this. I only heard Edgar Wright talk about this, how he saw.
Oh yeah, if you were growing up in the UK, there's like a whole list of films that you couldn't see, and they were taken to court. And like I said, it's under the umbrella of video nasties. And that's a whole other podcast, a whole other history there. But Evil Dead was part of that.
Well, let's dive into the movie because I had an absolute fucking blast. It was amazing last night. The drive-in was the greatest way to watch it. I also told you one of the fun things, Evil Dead, when I first saw it, I was very dismissive of just because of the lack of polish on the movie and.
16 millimeter. I think it was shot in 16.
Well, in the low budget showed when I watched that, and I found a trick lately with watching older movies, which I was telling you about last night. it's fun with film history just to assume that the movie came out 5 years before it came out, and you'll find yourself so forgiving of any flaws or any kind of technical problems. But also the movie started out with a lot of static shots, a lot of setups. It showed its low budget early. They didn't put a lot of money or thought into the beginning, and when the movie goes to nighttime and takes off, it takes off. Even though I remember the other thing my friends when we watched it pointed out was the number of times they reused that full moon with the silhouetted cloud smoke coming over it above in those wide exterior shots over the cabin. But the it was just I guess I would thought would have been fun to have watched that movie back in what year did it came out? 81?
I thought it was 79 or
no, it's an 80. It's 80 or 81, but I thought it would have been fun to watch that with the first Friday the 13th or something along those lines.
I'm sorry, 1981. You're right. It is 81.
So when the movie then kind of kicks in, it's I mean, there's so much fun stuff about the movie. I celebrated when the Joel Coen assistant editor credit came up, but this births this is a major film voice coming on the scene, and he's got very limited resources, but even with those limited resources, he's still doing a lot of fun stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing if he's a limited resource, and he has a whole stop animation dance sequence. This is
well, that's Evil Dead 2.
No, there's a dance in the first one.
Where's the dance in the first one?
The thing comes out of the grave and the head pops on it.
That's 2. We just watched this last night. That was the beginning of 2. Because the other funny thing that I'd always...
Are you sure it's 2?
Yes, because they recreate the shovel decapitation. And the other funny thing about Evil Dead 1...
Well, there is some stop animation, isn't there?
Yeah, but it's the bodies at the end.
Decay.
Then it's really cool looking because it looks like it's in camera. It's not one of those model setups that's done on a set much later. I mean, it has to be. It probably is. But it just looked more in camera because... Then, not to spoil, but there's another creature effect that comes up after the dissolving. So, okay, when the movie starts to kick in, one of the funny things I noticed last night was all the demons possessed up until maybe first off, the set of people brought up it's 2 guys and 3 girls, so there's a 5th wheel. Then all the demons, the first demon possessions are all women, and it seemed like it's Raimi, Robert Tappert, and Ash, who's
Bruce Campbell.
And it's Bruce Campbell. And it just felt like a bunch of young guys writing a script based on they're afraid of girls who are going to turn into demons, and especially on weekends when they think they're going to have sex. And this time, the first big Gonzo sequence, it is... When I first watched it, I had seen Evil Dead 2, so I expected... The Evil Dead, let's say, for the first one, is relatively straight. There's some funny stuff in it, but it's relatively a straight horror movie. And the first real Gonzo sequence is the infamous tree rape. And when I saw that for the first time, I mean, I don't know if it was said much about how I was at that age, where it's funny, or it's kind of odd that they chose it. But this time watching it, I was really disturbed by it.
Well, yeah, and it's a couple of things about that. Observations I had about it was it seems like the second time they do it, they actually tone it down in Evil Dead 2.
Yeah, it's almost like
they know that they went maybe too far the first time.
That's a good.
And now they're becoming better filmmakers,
right.
Better storytellers, and they know that they don't have to do it as blunt as it is in the first one. Another thing reminded me of Japanese anime. The anime, there's I want to, the word fiendish overlord comes in my mind, or something. But there's a ton of anime that deals with all these tentacles that attack
hentai or whatever it is.
That attack women like that.
I know there's a bunch of porn that does that.
Well, there's the anime that's for mature audiences or whatever.
Okay.
Or is it outright porn? I'm not sure. But I remember. I wonder what came first, or was it around the same time, or was it in the air at the time? If Raimi got there first, or
it's when that sequence comes up. This is a sign that this movie's been pretty pedestrian and little by the numbers, and it's the signal this movie's going to go. And
yeah, I like I said, we were kind of freewheeling it today. We didn't really do a lot of homework because we just want to kind of talk about our reaction at the drive-in last night. to seeing these. But I'd be curious, and I think at one time I knew this, where in context it is with European horror and other horror films at the time, because the blood, the gushing of blood, and the stop animation of the decaying and the demon possession.
Well, have you ever heard Raimi say that he was influenced by that? I haven't.
No, it's been a while. Like I said, it's been so long. Raimi's kind of been off the radar a lot. It seems like lately. The Oz movies was the last film he did.
Oh my God, that's his last.
Yeah, he hasn't done anything since.
Wow.
Directed wise.
Well, because you were talking to me last night that the oddity of his next announced movie is a Marvel movie. He's the guy that directed, arguably for many people, the best superhero movie of all time, Spider-Man 2. Is now doing a Marvel movie where I can't imagine he's got final cut. He's doing Doctor Strange.
Doctor Strange, which is nice if you think about it. Just a I can't even say the word.
Synchronicity.
Yes, he's doing the two Ditko characters. He's done.
Yeah, that does seem promising. That does seem cool, especially because if. 3D seems like it's died out, but one of the reasons I dug the first Doctor Strange so much was seeing it in 3D. There was some really fun Ditko stuff in there.
And for your non-comic book fans listening in, if you are listening, when it comes down to the Marvel Universe, pretty much practically everything was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, except for two prominent characters was co-created with artist Steve Ditko, and it's Doctor Strange and Spider-Man.
And Steve Ditko is a very expressive and graphically interesting
and Raimi's a very expressive and graphic director.
Yeah, the thing I've always been, my favorite Raimi movie was for the longest time Darkman in high school, and I just remember convincing one of my other friends who was really into Evil Dead at the time that the Raimi has a great operatic sense and a lot of expressionistic.
It gets more and more with that. Yeah,
exactly. and he puts these in these like really pop situations.
And apparently he wanted to do the Shadow, and he couldn't get the rights back then. So he said, "Well, I'll just do my own superhero, do my own character."
I just heard a story a few weeks ago where basically Universal, he didn't have final cut on it, and Universal made him cut out 10 minutes, and him and Robert Tappert, or actually basically while they were finishing the last mix, without Universal knowing it, after they'd all agreed to it in the final version, they went ahead and added the 10 minutes back in and it wasn't exactly Raimi's director's cut, but it was closer. But he basically just like, on the last technical things, took the executives' demands and ignored them.
Well, that's always a nice little trick, like when you take your movie to the MPA and say, "Yeah, I'll cut this."
Well, it's one thing to do the MPA where you're cutting excessive gore, but it's another thing of like getting your checked off by the people paying the checks and then biting their hands later.
Yeah, but where they show the film again and they haven't really cut anything and they go, "Oh, okay, it's okay now." It's like what? Mm-hmm. But anyway, Raimi. So, going back to the Evil Dead films, it was really interesting because I think when I watched Evil Dead the first time, it's basically, "Oh, we missed this. Let's go back and see what he did." But it's so interesting. I think the whole phenomenon of, I would love to tally up how many filmmakers started doing a horror film that jump-started their careers, and that's what a lot of wannabe filmmakers out there. That's what they do because it seems to be the easiest accessible kind of film to do.
Well,
money. They would get some money too.
To this day, I've been given the advice that if you want to start out, the easiest money maker is to do horror. It's the easiest to market.
And if you do a good horror film, makes money, which Evil Dead apparently did. Stephen King gave it an endorsement. Which
I was thinking about that last night too.
So, but it's so fascinating. If you're a filmmaker and to see if you want to learn how to be a filmmaker. Watch the jump from Evil Dead to Evil Dead 2 is very fascinating.
There's the movie in between, Crime Wave.
Crime Wave, yeah, which the Coen Brothers helped write. Coen Brothers are part of the gang Ted started out.
We talked about it a little bit last night. I need to give that movie another watch because I remember really finding my viewing of it very tedious and not enjoyable.
See,
I bet it's better than I remember it.
Well, the funny thing about Crime Wave, in some ways, the first Evil Dead, for me, they're just very insightful and educational of where Raimi came from, and he was getting his kinks out. So by Evil Dead 2, he's now a full-fledged, smooth filmmaker that makes, and then he goes along and he ends up being, doing non-genre stuff, mainstream stuff like the Kevin Costner baseball film.
Or Simple Plan is a great
Gift.
one, or The Gift is a great one. But so let's get into Evil Dead 2, because for me last night, they're years off, but what it felt like was watching Evil Dead 1 to Evil Dead 2 is like watching Mad Max to Road Warrior.
Oh, yeah.
Because for some reason, I kept thinking of what Jack Black in High Fidelity would have been telling me about this movie, that it really is one of the greatest movies ever made in its own individuality and idiosyncrasy, like, and what it's doing, like just the manner of like creativity going into it, the gonzo-ness, the passion behind it, like it's such a fun movie. It's something. It was like, well, we were talking about the Three Stooges stuff, which.
Yeah, again, if you do your homework on Sam Raimi, which we really didn't do much, but you know that he's a big lover of Three Stooges. And so now, watching it now, I'm like, oh my gosh, the Stooges stuff is all over the place. It's just, a hidden disguise in a horror genre.
But it works.
Oh,
and that's the brilliant part of it. It's the way to sneak a Three Stooges bit into a very gory horror movie.
I mean, and I want to think also that if you're a fan of Raising Arizona, it's like
this is such a prototype of Raising Arizona.
This is a Sam Raimi. It's like the Coen Brothers were just doing their Sam Raimi film.
Yeah, it felt like between Raimi and the Coens, they were creating this own like genus of cinema at that point.
The camera, the prowling camera,
it starts with a camera on two 2x4s, but then it moves into Chuck Jones at a certain point.
Right,
and it's the live action Chuck Jones.
And we were talking about this last night about the chase scene. I had never when the demon goes flying through all these different rooms and doors and the sound effects and just over and over, door, room, door, and that happens in Raising Arizona, where Nicolas Cage has got the diapers and the dogs are chasing, and he goes to their backyard fence through the house, the living room, and I'm just thinking, wow, this is and at the time we hadn't seen that at that time in the early 80s. We hadn't seen that in a live action film, so it was
it's still a technically hard thing to pull off.
Yeah,
it's kind of amazing.
It was just to see that in the theater or at a drive-in or whatever. It was just a revelation at the time.
Let's get to another misconception I've had over the years, which you have tried to disabuse me of. For starters, I mean, I always thought of Evil Dead 2 as a remake of Evil Dead 1, just done better and more polished, and I always compared it to what I thought was a Fistful of Dollars and For a Few Dollars More, which I thought For a Few Dollars More was vaguely a remake of A Fistful of Dollars, and you adamantly
no, completely different, a whole different story, a whole different concept.
But it seems like they're reusing the same characters, and the character connections have been completely rewritten.
The only connection is Clint looks like he operates and looks like the guy from the first film. In the second film.
But you were trying to tell me that part of my confusion came from, you said Good, Bad, and the Ugly is probably the first one sequentially.
Well, if you're gonna put them in a continuity order, Clint's wearing this totally different outfit. Good, Bad, and the Ugly, big white coat, big white hat.
Yeah.
Calling him, and he has a name Blondie. He's called Blondie in that. He goes through the entire film till they get to near the end where they're at the concentration camp, and Lee Van Cleef hands him a new outfit to wear because he's Clint was disguised as a Confederate soldier, so he gives him this outfit, and it's the man with no name. It's the outfit he'd been wearing in Fistful of Dollars and Few Dollars More.
Okay.
And so therefore he doesn't have that outfit, and then this is a Civil War is taking place, and you can think that he's got his outfit now. After the Civil War is over with, he continues his bounty hunting ways, and he's now out even further west as a bounty hunter.
Okay. I immediately went to a Temple of Doom assumption that a random prequel putting into, but which, I mean, you're nodding that a little.
Well, yeah, it's time wise. If you want to make that work, but people call it, The Man with No Name is a marketing strategy. From UA. He's called Joe in the first film.
That's another reason I just assumed that.
He's referred to as Manco in the second film, and he's called Blondie in the third film.
So I was wrong about Evil Dead 1 and 2. What it is that the first 15 minutes is a remake of Evil Dead 1, only distilled with
collapsed.
It just
condensed.
Well, they get rid of all excess characters. It's just Ash, who I pointed this out last night. I never remembered in Evil Dead he's called Ashley. That is his name. But Ash and his betrothed, or and with the necklace recreated. In fact, they recreate, as you forgot, the stop motion was in 2, but there's a decapitation with it and a burial, and then the movie just goes from there, and it is gone. Well, I know the other thing I used to make fun of was the that is a creative thing, was the different number colors of blood, but it even seemed more consistent to me last night, the blood color.
Yeah, I forgot about the gushing and how some of the just the the flooding of fluids, and I think that might have been a new thing too. I mean, there's reams and reams of books of all this stuff dissected to the nth degree, and where if this is the first time it happened or where Raimi got it. But I would say the young viewers out there that haven't seen these, the Spider-Man movies, I would say, man, you need to go back and look at these 2 films or the Dark Evil Dead trilogy, all 3 of them, to see where Raimi gets his foundation from, because it's a master class in some ways.
Yeah.
Watching this and seeing the evolution, that's half the fun of finding a director you like, and seeing the difference between Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. Put Crime Wave in the middle too. You'll see.
If you must.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe. The
thing about Crime Wave, sometimes I enjoyed it. Like you said, you probably, but it was fascinating because they were doing things in Crime Wave. You talk about live Chuck Jones and they were really, really trying to be a live action cartoon in Crime Wave.
I think the problem was that when you see you put it next to something like Raising Arizona, you see it just very charming and dynamic, as opposed to Crime Wave. It's a chore to get through.
Did you also think about, when watching last night, I had the chuckle every time Raimi did a lot of it last night in both Evil Deads. Everybody got a big kick in Blood Simple, the Coen Brothers debut, when the camera prowls down the bar and it goes
over the drunk's head.
It goes over the drunk's head. You saw that all the time in the Evil Dead films. The camera prowling, and it would go over a tree stump or go around a tree. Constantly.
I guess I was thinking on a practical level that why they would have to do that.
Well, yeah, it is somewhat practical, but it seemed almost like the Coen Brothers were doing almost another little salute to Sam in Blood Simple.
I recently finished Barry Sonnenfeld's book, and he mentioned that there's a point where the Coens tried to take that shot out of the movie, Blood Simple.
Yeah. Was it Barry's idea to do that, or?
I don't remember.
Or I just thought I always see that it's almost like it's from Evil Dead almost.
Yeah.
Because the camera's constantly doing that.
Yeah. If this is a great example for of just a low budget kinetic because the thing of it is the camera work. There's some weak stuff in Evil Dead, but when they get around to Evil Dead 2, which is not there's a little bit more money, but it's not that expensive of a movie. That is some of the most virtuoso kinetic cinema you're going to find anybody making at any studio level, and it is deeply inspiring.
Right, and I would say in the first one, that's what keeps your attention. I think if you're open to it, there's some dullness to it. The storytelling is a little plotting. The the actors are not really up to speed. He hasn't been able to get the actors at their full potential, but there's this sense of camera work and shots that you could tell, okay, this guy's going to be a filmmaker. This guy really wants to be a filmmaker, and he's going to show off what he can do. And speaking of Leone, I mean, you even get the eye close-ups. He's doing,
the eye close-ups.
He's doing.
There's so much great. I always associate eye close-ups. I know you say Leone, but I associate them with Hitchcock, and there was a lot of great Hitchcock.
Well,
shots.
yeah.
The key shot and the overhead key shot and how that kept coming back in Evil Dead 1. It was. I mean, the thing about the early sequences in Evil Dead 1 is they're very clearly cinematically thought out, even before they get to the let's put the camera on the 2x4.
And the sound mixing, the sound too, even when the camera pans over the rafters, each rafter makes a sound.
That was such a cool moment. That was such a cool musical moment too. And it was not the coolest thing to be able to watch that at the drive-in, but I thought last night was like what sucks is it's one of me and one it's going to be up there as the most fun I had at the movies this year, possibly. And I've had a good time this summer going to the drive-in. How
do you feel about drive-ins in the COVID era? You feel comfortable and everything? I mean,
you mean health-wise?
Yeah.
I feel
obviously,
good.
I was surprised you told me that it hasn't been that well attended on some of
Yeah.
the ones you've gone to. I thought they'd be doing gangbusters.
Well, the worry I have is this is going to. I think this might be the last weekend they're open, just because it's getting colder, and they switched from weekends only after school started back up. So I imagine their attendance isn't compelling them to keep open. But I mean, I had a bunch of good double features at the drive-in this
Well,
summer.
how do you and you always do the how do you sit in the drive-in when you go? You always do the hatchback open in the back.
Last night I knew to tell you that the theater we watched at, that there's going to be a certain point where I have a Prius that will run on battery for most point, but when the car will turn on, the exhaust is going to blow back in your face for a while.
But I was a little surprised. This is the holiday. They got look like a pretty smooth operation, but you got to walk quite a way to get to the concession stand if you're in screen 5. That's
Yeah.
where we were at. And there was a long line, so I didn't get in the concession line. Thankfully, we got food before we went.
I mean, my past concession experience has been fine.
Okay, they go pretty fast. The line goes pretty fast.
Yeah, or I mean, it's like other COVID stuff where you have to be the jerk who's like, nope, I'm staying outside, and signal to everyone else, wear your mask and stay outside.
Yeah, and most people I had the mask on in the line. They were in line when I went to it. I checked it out. I didn't get in line, and then for the most part, everybody it was a pretty good experience. Even though I do miss the speakers.
It was not good sound. It was because I actually thought their master volume might have been turned down because the sound's been better in the past. Jaws was not that bad.
Oh, the one thing I was disappointed too is that they didn't. The intermission between the two movies is
Very short.
very short.
Very short.
Which I'm surprised because that's a way to get people to go to concession. And someone like me who doesn't want to miss any frame of the movie, that was my memory as a kid. I loved the driving because you'd have these long intermissions. I don't know how long they were, but you had plenty of time to go to the bathroom, get your pizza, hot dogs.
Would you hang out? That's what I thought you were implying last night. You'd hang out with people or run into your friends.
Well, if you got there early, they had all kinds of stuff. They would have a big pit of sawdust with gifts, finding them as you dig in through them. They had one drive-in had a go-kart. One drive-in had a train that would take kids all around the whole drive-in acres. And so you had a lot of things. So if you went as kids, you probably went down to the playground and hung out. But then we got to a point where we were trying to take in as many films as we could. They would do kung fu marathons, Eastwood marathons.
You were talking about an all probably cut up and an all-night Eastwood marathon.
Recently, I was really thought, wow, I saw these films that they would do a marathon of Spend a Night with Clint Eastwood. It's all three men with no names and hang them high, but it turns out that apparently that some of these marathons they would trim the prints. So they could do 4 films a night or 5 films.
As soon as you said that, that made total sense.
So there's a good chance that I saw some trimmed films. Of course, I've seen them so many times I would get to a point I think I would notice that. But
well, do you? I think we should wind down. Do you have any final thoughts?
No, it was. I'm glad you got me out and got out and see it because it's like I have Evil Dead 1 and 2 in my library. I don't think I've even upgraded the Blu-ray. It's just like, am I ever going to get around to watching them again? So it was a good way to get off my butt and see those, and I'm glad I did because I forgot how much excitement Raimi was really exciting, and when he nailed the Spider-Man comic book movie, it was like everything came to fruition with him. To see him, but being this film fan, this comic book fan, this fanboy gone good.
Ditko fan.
Yeah. So
I wanted to close with another piece of Vitamin podcast recommendation. Another podcast that I've been listening to a lot is The Happiness Lab with Dr. Laurie Santos, and it's based on this course she teaches at Harvard, I believe. That is the most popular course in Harvard's history, and it's basically about how a lot of what we do to make ourselves happy is very counterintuitive, and a lot of social sciences and neurosciences have found out different things we can do. And one of the episodes I listened to recently was from the first season about doing things together. And what really hit me, it wasn't mentioned in the episode, was the loss we have this year of and general happiness of not being able to go to the movies together.
Community, the key word community.
She talked a lot about some experiments that pointed out that she compared it to social sharing and sharing of photos, and how that's counterintuitive in weird ways, and but whenever you experience something with a person, it magnifies it. It's not that it automatically makes it better. It's just when you dislike something, you guys dislike it together. And it was nice we were socially distanced at the movies last night, so but it was nice to go to a movies with a friend last night.
And to amplify that point, there's a scene in Evil Dead 2, well, there's a couple of scenes, but the one scene that you really need to see with the audience, when he says groovy. You know, that just, when he did that back in the day, and still to this day, when you watch it with people, you all laugh, you all clap in unison. Whether you see
there were some. I clapped.
I know.
Loud.
I saw that. I heard that.
Yeah, and I mean, people around me were laughing, and we're trying to get as much community as far as distance out. But I don't want to end on too bummer of a note. But I mean, we saw Tenet together, so but even that was distance, and the whole concept.
And the IMAX.
Even if you're willing to brave a theater right now, you can't go with a crowd theater. You can't go with. There's not going to be too many people, and it's just not the same. I'm no judgments if you're going to want to go to a theater right now, but
and we want people to go because we want them to survive. You know, well, it's a catch-22.
I mean, they're going to have to survive some form. My point to wind down is just of all the things that sucks about 2020 is just not being able to go to the movies together. I don't know. Anybody listening to this missing the movie theater experience, just stay strong. Just try to keep your head up and. Groovy. Well, that's all for this episode. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks Ted for coming back.
Anytime.